What if the biggest reason you're struggling in life is not a lack of talent? What if it's because you keep playing by rules that were never designed to protect you? You trust too quickly. You react too quickly. You reveal too much. You chase approval. And then you wonder why other people seem to have more control over your life. Stay with me, because these principles can completely change the way you see people, power, respect, and your own future. And the first lesson may be the hardest one to accept. Before you learn how to influence the world, learn how to control yourself. Think about that. If someone can make you angry with a sentence, they can influence you. If someone's approval determines your confidence, they can influence you. If rejection makes you abandon your goals, they can influence you. Real power begins when your emotions stop being controlled by every person who enters your life. You don't need to become cold. You need to become disciplined. Pause before reacting. Think before speaking. Observe before judging. And choose your response instead of surrendering it to impulse. Because the person who controls himself is far harder to control. If you're serious about changing the way you think, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. We're building a mindset based on discipline, confidence, strategy, and self-mastery, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. The second principle is simple. Your reputation is working for you even when you're not in the room. People remember patterns. They remember whether you keep your promises, whether you remain calm under pressure, whether you can be trusted, whether your words match your actions. You can spend years building credibility and destroy it through careless behavior in a single moment. So stop asking only, how can I win this situation? Ask, how will this decision affect the person I become? Because every action is a vote for your future identity. The third lesson is knowing when not to fight. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every disagreement deserves an argument. Not every person deserves access to your energy. Some battles produce victory. Others produce nothing except exhaustion. Wisdom is knowing the difference. Sometimes silence protects your position better than explanation. Sometimes walking away is more powerful than proving a point. And sometimes the strongest response is simply continuing to build while someone else wastes their energy trying to distract you. The fourth principle is becoming genuinely valuable. Don't build influence through appearance alone. Build competence. Learn, practice, become reliable. Develop skills that solve real problems. The more useful you become, the less dependent you are on approval. Real value creates options, and options create freedom. The fifth lesson is to observe before you act. People reveal themselves through patterns. Watch how someone treats people who cannot benefit them. Watch how they behave when they are frustrated. Watch whether their promises match their actions. Words can be carefully chosen. Ports are harder to fake. The final principle may be the most important. Build a future that does not depend on anyone's approval. Your purpose must be stronger than praise. Your discipline must be stronger than distraction. Your identity must be stronger than rejection. Because life will change. People will change. Opportunities will appear and disappear. Some people will support you. Others will doubt you. But if your direction comes from within, none of these things can permanently derail you. Remember this, power is not about controlling everyone around you. It is about becoming so disciplined, observant, valuable, and purposeful that you stop giving other people unnecessary control over your future. If this message changed the way you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And from this moment forward, don't just react to life. Study it. Master yourself. Choose your battles. Build your value. Protect your reputation, and create a future that no one else has the power to take away. The first step toward changing your future is understanding that the greatest form of power begins with self-mastery. Many people spend their lives trying to influence other people while having very little control over their own emotions, habits, and reactions. They become angry when someone criticizes them, insecure when they are ignored, and desperate when they face rejection. Every external event becomes capable of changing their mood and direction. This creates a dangerous weakness because anyone who knows how to trigger your emotions can influence your decisions. True strength begins when you stop allowing temporary emotions to become permanent instructions. Self-mastery does not mean becoming emotionless. Anger, fear, disappointment, excitement, and sadness are natural human experiences. The goal is not to eliminate them, but to understand them before deciding how to act. When something provokes you, create a pause between the event and your response. That small pause gives your rational mind an opportunity to evaluate the situation. Instead of immediately sending the message, starting the argument, quitting the goal, or making a decision you may regret, you ask yourself whether the reaction actually serves your interests. This discipline becomes especially important when dealing with difficult people. Someone may intentionally criticize you, challenge your confidence, or attempt to make you feel guilty. If you react exactly as they expect, they gain influence over your behavior. But when you remain calm, observe what is happening, and choose your response deliberately, their ability to control you decreases. You do not need to defeat them emotionally. You simply refuse to surrender your decision-making power. Self-mastery also applies to everyday habits. The ability to control your attention, keep commitments, manage distractions, and continue working when motivation disappears creates a foundation for long-term success. Anyone can act with discipline when everything feels easy. Real character appears when you maintain your standards during difficult moments. Over time, controlling yourself changes the way you experience life. You become less reactive, more patient, and more deliberate. Criticism can become information instead of an attack. Failure can become instruction instead of an identity. Rejection can become redirection instead of destruction. You begin making decisions based on principles rather than temporary emotions. The most powerful person in the room is not necessarily the loudest, richest, or most intimidating. It is often the person who cannot easily be pushed into losing control of themselves. When your emotions become something you understand rather than something that commands you gain a form of freedom that no outside approval can provide, allowing you to move through pressure with clarity, discipline, and deliberate strength. Your reputation is one of the most valuable forms of influence you possess because people often make decisions about you based on the patterns they have observed over time. Before someone trusts you with an opportunity, responsibility, relationship, or important information, they often consider whether your behavior has shown reliability and integrity. You may not notice your reputation being built day by day, but every promise you keep, every commitment you honor, and every decision you make contributes to the picture others form of your character. Reputation is not created by one impressive moment. It is created through consistency. Many people damage their reputation because they focus too heavily on immediate rewards. They exaggerate their achievements, make promises they cannot keep, speak carelessly, or behave differently depending on who is watching. These actions may produce temporary attention, but eventually patterns become visible. Once people notice inconsistency, trust becomes difficult to rebuild. A strong reputation, on the other hand, develops when your private behavior matches your public image. You become known as someone whose words can be trusted because your actions repeatedly support what you say. Protecting your reputation does not mean trying to make everyone like you. It means maintaining standards that you respect even when there is no immediate reward for doing so. You cannot control every opinion people have about you, and attempting to manage every perception can become exhausting. Instead, focus on the things you can control: your behavior, your communication, your reliability, and the way you treat others. When those qualities remain consistent, your reputation becomes naturally stronger. Your response during difficult situations also reveals your character. Anyone can appear confident when circumstances are favorable. The real test comes when you face criticism, pressure, disagreement, or failure. If you remain respectful and composed, people remember that. If you become dishonest, aggressive, or unreliable under pressure, they remember that too. Difficult moments often reveal more about your character than comfortable ones. A strong reputation creates opportunities because people prefer working with individuals they can trust. It can open doors without you having to force them open because others become willing to recommend you, collaborate with you, or depend on you. But reputation should never become an obsession with appearances. The goal is not to manipulate perception, but to build genuine character that deserves respect. When your actions remain aligned with your values, your reputation becomes a natural reflection of who you are. You no longer need to constantly prove yourself because consistency speaks on your behalf. Over time, trust becomes one of your greatest forms of influence, allowing your character to continue working for you even when you are not present to explain, defend, or promote yourself. Not every conflict deserves your energy, and learning to choose your battles carefully can completely change the quality of your life. Many people believe strength means responding to every insult, correcting every misunderstanding, and defending themselves against every criticism. But constant confrontation does not necessarily create respect. Often, it simply drains your attention and keeps you emotionally connected to people and situations that do not contribute to your growth. True judgment comes from understanding that your time and emotional energy are limited, so you must decide where they are worth investing. Before entering an argument, pause and consider what you are actually trying to achieve. Are you protecting an important boundary, solving a genuine problem, or simply trying to prove that you are right? These situations require very different responses. A serious issue involving your safety, dignity, responsibilities, or important relationships may deserve direct communication. A random insult from someone who wants a reaction may deserve nothing more than silence and distance. When you understand the difference, you stop treating every challenge as equally important. Choosing your battles also requires emotional discipline. Anger creates urgency, making even minor disagreements feel like emergencies. When emotions are intense, the desire to respond immediately can become stronger than the desire to make a wise decision. Give yourself time before responding whenever possible. A few moments of reflection can prevent hours of unnecessary conflict. Ask yourself whether your response will improve the situation or simply create another problem. This simple habit can protect your reputation and preserve your peace. Strategic silence can sometimes communicate more confidence than a long explanation. If someone is committed to misunderstanding you, repeating yourself may not change anything. If someone is deliberately provoking you, an emotional response gives them exactly what they wanted. Walking away does not mean you are weak or afraid. It means you have decided that the situation is not valuable enough to control your attention. However, choosing your battles should never become an excuse for avoiding every difficult conversation. Healthy relationships require honesty, accountability, and respectful communication. The goal is not to become passive, but to become selective. Speak when your words can create clarity, protect a boundary, solve a meaningful problem, or defend something important. Remain silent when speaking would only feed unnecessary drama. As you develop this judgment, you become calmer and more effective. You stop wasting energy on petty disagreements and redirect that energy toward your goals, relationships, and personal development. Other people's attempts to provoke you lose their power because you no longer react automatically. Your strength becomes visible through restraint, and your future becomes less controlled by temporary conflicts because you have learned to distinguish between battles that matter and battles that merely demand attention. Becoming genuinely valuable through competence is one of the strongest ways to build lasting confidence and influence. Many people focus on appearing successful rather than becoming capable. They want recognition, attention, or respect before developing the skills that would naturally earn those things. Real value works differently. It comes from knowledge, discipline, reliability, problem-solving ability, and the willingness to keep improving when nobody is watching. When you become genuinely useful, you no longer need to constantly convince people of your worth because your abilities create evidence for you. Competence begins with choosing something worth mastering. It could be communication, leadership, business, technology, creativity, fitness, or any skill that contributes meaningfully to your goals. The important part is commitment. Learning a little about everything may create the appearance of knowledge, but deep competence comes from focused practice. You study, make mistakes, receive feedback, correct weaknesses, and repeat the process. Progress is often slow, But every hour invested in improvement increases your ability to create results. Reliability is another major part of becoming valuable. Talent without consistency can be difficult to trust. People remember those who deliver when they say they will, solve problems without unnecessary excuses, and remain dependable when circumstances become difficult. When your words consistently match your actions, people begin to trust your judgment. That trust can become more valuable than temporary popularity because it creates opportunities based on confidence in your abilities. Competence also reduces your dependence on approval. When you know you have developed real skills, you no longer need constant praise to feel capable. You can accept criticism without immediately becoming defensive because you understand that feedback can improve your performance. You can also recognize when criticism is irrelevant without allowing it to damage your confidence. Your self-belief comes from evidence created through effort, practice, and results. Becoming valuable does not mean believing you are better than everyone else. True competence creates humility because the more you learn, the more you recognize how much remains to discover. You become confident without becoming arrogant. You can appreciate other people's strengths while continuing to develop your own. Over time, competence creates freedom. The more capable you become, the more options you have. You can solve problems, adapt to change, take on greater responsibilities, and create opportunities instead of constantly waiting for them. Your influence becomes based on substance rather than image. Instead of demanding recognition, you become someone whose abilities naturally command respect because people can see the results of your discipline, knowledge, and consistent effort. This kind of value cannot be easily taken away because it is built into your character and capabilities through years of deliberate growth. Observing before you act is one of the most powerful habits you can develop because it gives you information before you make a decision. Many people react immediately to what they hear, see, or feel without taking enough time to understand the situation. A single comment can trigger anger, a rumor can create suspicion, or an unexpected event can cause panic. When you react without observing, you often make decisions based on incomplete information. The ability to pause, watch, listen, and understand patterns allows you to respond from knowledge rather than impulse. People reveal a great deal through consistent behavior. Someone may speak politely while repeatedly treating others poorly. Another person may promise support but disappear whenever responsibility appears. Instead of judging people only by what they say, observe whether their actions consistently match their words. Look at how they behave when they are frustrated, disappointed, or dealing with someone who cannot offer them anything. These moments can reveal character more clearly than carefully chosen words, because pressure often exposes habits that people try to hide. Observation also helps you understand motives without immediately assuming them. When someone behaves unexpectedly, it is easy to create a story in your mind about why they did it. But assumptions can lead to unnecessary conflict. A more disciplined approach is to gather information first. Ask yourself what you actually know, what you are only assuming, and what evidence could change your interpretation. This creates clearer thinking and prevents emotional conclusions from controlling your decisions. In professional and personal relationships, observation can help you recognize patterns early. You may notice repeated dishonesty, unreliability, unnecessary drama, or genuine consistency before becoming deeply involved. Recognizing these patterns does not require manipulating anyone. It simply allows you to make informed choices about trust, boundaries, and the amount of energy you invest. Observing before acting also improves your emotional control. A pause creates distance between what happens and how you respond. Instead of immediately sending an angry message, confronting someone, or making a major decision, you give yourself time to understand the situation. Sometimes you discover that the problem was smaller than you initially believed. Other times, observation confirms that a serious issue requires direct action. Either way, your response becomes more deliberate. Over time, this habit makes you more difficult to deceive and less likely to be controlled by temporary emotions. You become patient enough to notice details, disciplined enough to wait for evidence, and confident enough not to rush simply because others are reacting quickly. Your decisions become more accurate because they are based on patterns rather than isolated moments. By observing first and acting second, you develop the quiet advantage of understanding what is really happening before deciding what deserves your response. Building a future independent of approval is one of the most important steps toward genuine freedom because it allows you to make decisions based on purpose rather than other people's reactions. Many people unconsciously organize their lives around being accepted. They choose careers because others expect them to, change their behavior to avoid criticism, and measure their success by how much recognition they receive. When approval becomes the foundation of your identity, your direction can change every time someone disagrees with you. A stronger life begins when you decide that your goals and values deserve commitment even when they are not immediately understood or praised. This does not mean ignoring everyone or refusing useful feedback. Wise people listen carefully, especially when criticism contains information that can help them improve. The difference is that they do not surrender their identity to every opinion. They evaluate feedback instead of automatically accepting or rejecting it. They ask whether the information is accurate, useful, and consistent with their values. This creates a balanced mindset where outside perspectives can contribute to growth without controlling the direction of your life. A purpose gives you an internal compass. It can involve building a career, developing a skill, creating something meaningful, supporting people you care about, or becoming a stronger and more disciplined version of yourself. When your purpose is clear, temporary approval becomes less important because you understand what you are working toward. Someone may criticize your progress, but you can continue if you know the criticism does not change your mission. Someone may praise you, but you remain grounded because you know praise is not the reason you started. Independence from approval also protects you from unhealthy relationships. When you desperately need someone to accept you, you may tolerate disrespect, abandon boundaries, or change yourself to prevent them from leaving. But when your identity is secure, you can appreciate relationships without becoming dependent on them for your sense of worth. You choose people who respect your values instead of trying to convince people who repeatedly undermine them. The future becomes more stable when your direction comes from within. Success will bring attention, failure may bring criticism, and circumstances will continue changing, but your principles can remain consistent. You become less reactive because temporary opinions no longer determine your long-term decisions. Every disciplined action strengthens your trust in yourself, and every challenge you overcome becomes evidence that you can continue moving forward without constant reassurance. Eventually, you realize that approval is pleasant but unnecessary for purpose. You can accept praise without becoming dependent on it, receive criticism without being destroyed by it, and experience rejection without abandoning your path. Your future becomes something you actively build rather than something you wait for others to validate. And that internal independence gives you the freedom to pursue meaningful goals with patience, confidence, and unwavering commitment.